Good evening. Shakespeare famously wrote in Twelfth Night, "Some are born great, some achieve greatness, but some have greatness thrust upon them." When delving into our Parsha and analyzing the incredible career of Yaakov Avinu, one would be correct in asserting that all three definitions apply to him. He was born great by dint of his parentage, Isaac and Rebekah, Abraham and Sarah. He was born into a great family. He certainly achieved greatness on his own by surviving his brother's murderous designs upon him, as well as creating, against all odds, an amazing, beautiful family, despite the obstruction and the intermeddling of his father-in-law, Laban. But what about the greatness which was thrust upon him? Where does that come in? This, I believe, occurs in our Parsha, when Yaakov, after securing the safety of his family, crosses the river Yabok alone, and then encounters one of the strangest incidents in the Torah, the incident of the angelic wrestler. Who was this wrestler? Where did he come from? What was his purpose? Furthermore, since when is Yaakov a wrestler? By now he's 80 years old. He spent most of his life being a simple shepherd. We don't know that he has any experience in the National Wrestlers Association. So much ink has been spilt in order to wrestle, no pun intended, with these questions. However, most commentators do agree that this was no mere physical match, but rather it was a more spiritual one. The angel was none other than the Saro Shel Esau, the spiritual guiding force of brother Esau, who spends all his time in trying to woo Yaakov, and by extension us, away from our spiritual roots, our religious beliefs, and our God. What are the tactics of this nefarious Saro Shel Esau? And how can we defeat him? The Medrash tells us that the reason why Yaakov returned across the river was because he left some pachim ktanim behind, some minor utensils, cans perhaps, of no great consequence. Perhaps what the Medrash is highlighting is that Yaakov made a mistake. He should not have gone back. What it's really trying to teach us is we should not get caught up in trivialities. Never lose sight of the important things in life, our grand views, our ideals, Yiddishkeit. Yes, we all have mundane challenges which we must overcome, but we should realize that we can't control everything. So we must never sweat the small stuff. We should instead concentrate on our priorities, our Shmirat HaMitzvot, Talmud Torah, for its own sake, and it goes without saying, the education of our children. Furthermore, another tactic that is often employed by the Yetzer Hara, this Saro Shel Esau, is to crush our spiritual esteem. The Saro Shel Esau commands us to seek out the paths of least resistance. He tells us, "Why do you think you're better than anyone else? Why not just do what most people do? Seek out the good life. Merely achieve what we Americans love to refer to as the ultimate goal, the American dream. Why, in addition, do you need to struggle to fulfill God's commandments? studying Torah, doing the mitzvot, of being active in a Jewish community and making yourself available to her needs. This type of thinking in Kabbalistic literature has a name. It's called katnut de mochin, literally small-mindedness. As Jews, we are obligated to engage only in gadlut de mochin, majestic ideas, grand planning, which will ineluctably succeed because God has chosen us to accomplish this very task. At the same time, paradoxically, we should not lose sight of the fact that gadlut, greatness, is also attained by an awareness of our own smallness. Yaakov declares when praying to God in the beginning of the Parsha, katonti, I am small in comparison to all the wonderful things that you have done for me, O God. The real gadol always considers himself katonti. To be a gadol, to be great, means to overcome the greatest of all enemies, oneself. As we find in reference to God himself, wherever we read of God's greatness, we also read of his humility, his humbleness. This is what makes man great, to embrace hardship, to welcome difficulty, and to achieve the impossible. Jacob ultimately succeeds in his enormous struggle. He pins down his adversary, but unfortunately there is a terrible cost. The Torah continues, Vayiga bechaf yerach Yaakov. The angel does succeed in damaging the thigh of Jacob. His sciatic nerve is slipped out of position. The sages interpret this to mean that this refers to all of the Jews throughout history who unfortunately and sadly were not able to withstand the arguments and the lure of the Sarosh al Esau, who have slipped away from us, from their parents, from their heritage, and their people. As a remembrance of this fact, we are commanded not to eat the sciatic nerve, which perhaps means to teach us that when we think of these Jews, do not renounce them altogether. Don't eat them out of existence. In other words, don't simply resign them to their fate. We don't know what their struggles were, whether they were violently imposed upon them against their will, or even if they abandoned ship on their own as a result of too much largesse, overindulgence, and the lures of a very permissive society. In most cases, they merely slipped away. But deep down, their Pintel Yid, their Jewish soul, is still somewhere to be found. It is ever present. Even if we do not succeed, even if they never return, perhaps their descendants might. Or their descendants' descendants. Sometimes this process can take many hundreds of years, even millennia. And in the end, these descendants of descendants do return. At the end of that long and harrowing night of the battle between Yaakov and the angel of Esau, the angel asks to be released. For soon the day will dawn, and like all angels, even bad ones, he must pray to his Creator. It's time to daven. Jacob tells him, I'm not letting you go. First you must bless me. In other words, you must promise me that I will continually beat you in this eternal fight. The angel responds, you are hereby blessed with a new name, a new identity. Yisrael, ki sarita im Elokim v'im anashim vatuchal. You have bested even the angels above. The people of Israel will continue to survive and win for all eternity. Am Yisrael Chai, until the dawning of that amazing day. Bayom Hahu Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. On that day, God's name will be one, and He will be one.